I feel like this needs a little bit of context. I used to have a plasma TV. It has a lot of the same advantages of OLED, the per pixel lighting, and the super fast response times. So I knew that when I was going to upgrade, I was going to get an OLED for keeping in that because that's what I'm used to. And to be honest, VA and IPS panels just look bad to me because of the backlight bloom and backlight bleed. On my old plasma, I had a Denon, I believe it was a 3311Ci receiver, hooked up to a couple of bookshelf speakers. I had the bookshelf speakers laying on their side because it would just be perfect to not cover up any of the screen, and they were a lot better than the internal speakers on that Panasonic display. When I upgraded to my LG CX, which was after I got my PS5, I immediately had to accept the fact that I wasn't going to be able to use the bookshelf speakers. The CX and most of the LG OLEDs have a super short stand on them. So I could no longer just lay them on their side, and I wasn't going to figure out something to have them flanking because of the way the room was set up that just wouldn't work. I was just using the internal speakers for a while until I could get this setup. Klipsch KLF10s, and a huge custom subwoofer that I bought from somebody. I sold that receiver, luckily for more than I bought it for, and for enough to greatly offset the cost of a new receiver. Because I had a PS5, I have an LG CX, 4k 120Hz, auto low latency mode, HDR10+, Dolby Vision, just hit all the boxes. So, growing up, my dad has had a sound system of some sort through everything. It's always been source, receiver, TV. So that's how I'm used to it. That's how I set it up. And I quickly noticed that there was a little bit of audio delay, at least running through my Chromecast. So I go in and I adjust it. It wasn't actually audio delay, it was a desynchronization issue. And what I also found out is that the LG CX on the home cinema modes with all the garbage disabled, there's still a little bit of delay. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I would assume it's due to the 24 FPS pull down method though. Regardless, go through that process. Okay, let's check the PS5, make sure that everything is good. I go through, I check that all the settings are what they should be, according to everything that I've read. They are, test it. It's slow. The audio is behind. This is the exact opposite of what happened with the Chromecast though. So like I said, on the Chromecast, it was kind of expected because of the pull-down method, blah, blah, blah. This isn't a game mode. It's not supposed to be super low latency. It's fine if there's a little bit of delay between frames on that mode at 24 frames per second. The 60 FPS test that I did on the PS5, though, revealed that the same basic issue was happening. The LG CX has options so that you can add frame delay so that you can sync up the audio. And the Denon receiver also has an option so that you can add delay to the audio to sync that up. But you don't want to add delay to your game video. There's so many reasons for this, but in short, that just wasn't an option. So I went through, I checked and verified and tried different settings on the PS5, the TV, the receiver, and I just couldn't get it to work. It was in 4k 120Hz mode. It was on low latency mode, it had all the settings right, and it just wouldn't work. Finally, I switched over to eARC. And I found out that I wasted money. Or rather that I could have gotten a better receiver if I hadn't been trying to hit that box, or really any of the boxes. I don't need Dolby Vision pass-through, I don't need HDR10 pass-through, because all of my devices are now going through the TV first. So, I'm not going to get specifically into the Denon AVR S760H, this is not a review of that. But I do want to give some context to this. The receiver that I bought, it was a refurbished, and Denon was having a refurbished sale. I think it cost me less than $400. It really wasn't that bad, especially once you account in the fact that I just sold a receiver to make up for a good amount of that. And I do have the nice new stuff that my old receiver didn't have, like Google Home integration and the more updated version of HEOS. But what I've found in all of my research is that 4K 120Hz across all receivers is basically worthless. At least if you're using it on an OLED, because it is just not fast enough to keep up with the TV. And I just could have gotten something with more pre-out ports, because right now I only have one for subwoofer, so if I upgrade these to something harder to drive, then I'm basically stuck with whatever I can do with 165 watts of power. That's just not ideal, and I don't want somebody to make the same mistake that I made. I'm not disappointed with my purchase, it's just the nature of the technology at the time. Now, that's not to say that this is a bad receiver or that any of the 4K 120Hz receivers are necessarily bad. I love this receiver, honestly. The integration's all really nice, HDMI CEC works well, etc., etc. It's just that I could have gotten something with better amps and more pre-outs instead of something that had a 4K 120Hz box and a Dolby Vision box and HDR10. It's just not something that you actually need because you should be using eARC. Anyway, this was mainly all just to say that you shouldn't make the same mistake that I made. I tried researching this stuff and I couldn't find an exact answer. I wanted something that would be within my budget, or rather within a reasonable budget, and no compromises. And instead I ended up with different compromises than I had expected because I was searching for specifically 4K 120Hz receivers instead of searching for receivers that just had great amplification, great pre-out options, etc.